Hey Unwrappers, Ollie here with a reminder about our sister podcast, The Overview, from the week. You've heard the headline, but what's the full story? Download The Overview podcast now to discover the past, present and future of an idea or story that's in the news. Each week, the Week team explores how we got to where we are today, asking guest experts what's going to happen next. To get it, just search for The Overview now and press follow to get news stories you'll wish you'd already known about. And now, on with the show. It's the week ending Saturday the 2nd of April, and this is The Week Unwrapped. In the past 7 days, we've seen a report finding that hundreds of babies died unavoidably at Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust, Will Smith apologising for slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, and Bruce Willis's family announcing he's stepping back from acting after being diagnosed with aphasia. But we're here to bring you some stories that passed under the radar this week. Big news not making headlines right now, but with repercussions for all our lives. I'm Olly Mann. Let's unwrap the week. And joining me today from The Week magazine is editor Theo Tait from Goal. It's Emma Smith, plus the host of refugee podcast Integrate That. It's Abdulwahab Tahhan. And Abdul, you are up first. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
Taliban bans girls from going to school again.
The Taliban's sudden reversal means girls above the 6th grade can't go to school until further notice. They threw our dreams in the dirt. We are girls and we want to become doctors or engineers, but they don't want us to study at all.
Michelle Stockman reporting for DW News last week. Abdul, what was that about and what's happened this week?
So Taliban seized power of Afghanistan in August, and since then they banned high school girls from going to school. Last week they decided that girls can go to school this week. 2 hours after that was gone into in effect, they decided that no, girls can't attend school anymore because of some concerns about uniform and Sharia law, and girls were sent back home. As a result, the World Bank has decided to suspend 4 projects worth of over £450 million supporting girls and women in education and agriculture.
Theo, this really does sort of fill our brief for the podcast, doesn't it? You know, the world's attention has been on Russia and Ukraine. What have we been missing whilst we've taken our eye off the ball regarding Afghanistan?
Well, the Taliban did say that they would allow girls into schools when they had drawn up a comprehensive Islamic plan for their education. They've now gone back on that, and there's no indication when that will be possible. Same time, they've said that the use of parks will now be segregated based on sex, which stops couples and families going to these places together. So women can go to parks 3 days a week, and men can go there the other 4 days. They've also prevented women from being able to travel on their own on airlines. So we do seem to be, returning to the 1990s as far as the Taliban are concerned.
And the story from this week specifically then, Emma, is about the World Bank withdrawing their plans. So as in Ukraine, we're seeing here global institutions effectively imposing sanctions on a nation with whom they disagree. This appears to be a new trend, doesn't it?
Yeah, the World Bank has paused $600 million worth of projects in Afghanistan, which would have been supporting projects in agriculture, education, health, livelihoods. But all that was dependent on equal access to things such as schooling and transport for women and girls. Obviously, as you say, this is part of a recent trend within global conflicts of organisations, nations putting sanctions on countries whose governments are doing things that are to the distaste of the wider world, such as Russia, Afghanistan. It's obviously part of a trend. One could say that it's perhaps preferable to military intervention, which clearly in the case of Afghanistan had extremely limited success. But we'll wait to see how much of a real life impact these sanctions will have, considering that the Taliban, despite these sanctions, will obviously still be in charge.
Yes. I mean, the crucial point, Abdul, is whether the removal of funding will reverse the Taliban's decision. Because they believe this stuff passionately and ideologically, don't they? Will it make any difference to them?
Well, I think the U-turn here shows clearly that there is not an agreement within the Taliban ranks about this, and they need to find a new plan or place in order to kind of convince the hardliners in the regime. But as you said, this is really concerning because it's not only about the money, because the money was not going to go directly to the Taliban. They were going to go through NGOs. And this is in itself is really troubling because we've seen that in Syria, where the UN has been funding NGOs related to the Syrian regime and has connection to the Syrian regime, and they spend tens of millions of dollars projects with them. So I'm not sure that if these projects specifically stop, the funding would stop.
Yeah, Theo, this was the Afghanistan Reconstruction Trust Fund that the money is being withdrawn from, and that's money that was to go effectively on aid projects, education, agriculture, health, family programs. They're just punishing the same people that are now being denied an education by withdrawing this money, one argument would say.
Well, I think in general, the NGOs tend to give quite a lot of latitude. As you're saying, there's plenty of funding that goes into Syria. I think in this case, what the World Bank said, that they literally didn't understand how the situation, that, they were meant to be working with local agencies, and they literally didn't understand how the system was going to work, and they didn't have any confidence that the goals of the projects could be met. So I think we're now looking at quite an extreme situation. Obviously, the wider situation in Afghanistan is awful, and it has been supposedly on the brink of famine for quite a long time. But if they literally can't work out how the money's going to be dispersed and who it's going to and whether there's any guarantee that it will go to the things it's meant to, then obviously they've got no choice.
But isn't it interesting, Emma, that they are still, the Taliban, not quite prepared to come out and say what they clearly think, which is that women should stay at home and not be educated. And they've had to come up with this strange excuse of, at the last minute, sorry, we realised that their school uniform was still immodest. It's clearly not about headscarves, but why can't they come out and say what they used to say 30 years ago? Why can't they come out and say, yeah, women should be at home, that's their role? Something's changed.
I think that in this, since Taliban took control in Afghanistan, there were these sort of think pieces in some areas of British media about, this is the new Taliban, this is the sort of a more progressive Taliban, as it were, which is, quite ridiculous. But it's sort of, it seems as if their attitude has been that they are trying to sort of like consolidate power at this stage, and so ensure that US forces or NATO forces don't return to Afghanistan, so try and put on a clean face of the world, as it were. It doesn't seem to be working. You've had these economic sanctions put on them. The US cancelled meetings in Doha with Taliban representatives after this news as well. While they may not be coming out and saying these things about women's access to education directly, it's clearly still part of the ideology of the current Afghanistan government.
Well, do you think, Abdul, they are transitioning to a stage where they are going to come out and say that once again, even though clearly it's violating a basic human right for girls to be educated?
Well, the Taliban are going to be the Taliban. I think in English we say you can't teach an old horse new tricks or something like this. And this
Close enough.
Yeah, English
You can't
is not my
teach a
first.
refugee new slogan.
Exactly. English is not my first language, so I'm not sure that they can do anything really about it because they are who they are. They are in power. They have guns, and if you see what they're doing, you cannot really forget where they're coming from. They ban girls. They don't want girls to have education. They don't. They hate the West. They hate democracy. They hate a lot of stuff. Now they don't say these things outright now because they still need a lot of stuff. They need money to reconstruct their country, to rebuild a few things. So they might try do new stuff, but the people who are living in Afghanistan are not the same people who, like 30 years ago. These people have been going to school. These people have known a few more things, so they wouldn't be quiet. There were a couple of protests happening in Kabul, and these girls, they were very, very brave talking to media. So things might change a little bit because of the extraordinary people living in Afghanistan, not because the Taliban has changed. They're the same awful people. We've known them forever.
And Theo, does this send a signal now to NGOs who are working in that region not to do so, to withdraw, to make a point? Or are there still organisations whose work's needed more than ever?
Yes, I think absolutely they are needed more than ever, and I think in general NGOs are quite determined at working in very difficult situations. I think they will keep trying, but for the time being, obviously it's very challenging.
Do you think the World Bank could have not made this decision?
From the sounds of it, no. If they've literally no idea how they can meet the goals of their projects, I don't see how they could have.
But there does seem to be a division, even within the Taliban, between more hardline and more moderate members of the Taliban, no?
There is a division between the Taliban itself. There are some hardliners who, just like in ISIS, you saw them that they wanted to apply Sharia laws extremely to the extremes, and they want to take up arms and fight and close girls' schools. And there are a little bit more moderate people who think that no, we need to open up, we need to do things differently this time because things didn't really work out the last time. But let's not forget that, again, this is the Taliban. Whether they are moderate or extremists, they are still extremists. They are still awful people. They still committed a lot of crimes from the 80s and 90s that we should not forget. And these are the same people. This is not the Taliban 2.1. This is not progressive Taliban. A progressive Taliban is an extremist Taliban. That's the same thing.
But they do still have the support of a lot of people in Afghanistan, don't they? That's how they're able to rule.
Well, that's true. You will find support for any group of people in any country. I mean, even ISIS had some support in Syria in somehow. Even Taliban will have some support for people who actually think, oh, being more extremist is a good thing. So you will always have support for people, but that doesn't mean that we should normalize the relationship with the regime or normalize or forget about the crimes that they did, because without accountability, there's no justice and there's no peace.
Okay. Emma, you're up next after this.
Brought to you by Aria Resorts Homes, providing holiday homes and staycation investments. Aria Resorts sell luxury holiday homes in top UK locations, with a potential 7% annual net return available to qualifying investors at our flagship resort in Cornwall. Terms and conditions apply. Find out more by searching Aria Resorts Investment.
Okay, Emma, your turn. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
When Florida officially didn't say gay.
Last week, we signed curriculum transparency legislation so that parents have a right to access the curriculum that's in their kids' schools, as well as understand what type of books are in school libraries. And today, we will sign HB 1557, the Parents' Rights in Education Bill. The bill prohibits classroom instruction about sexuality or things like transgender in K through 3 classrooms. And after third grade, those curriculums need to be age appropriate.
Florida State Governor Ron DeSantis there, signing his Parental Rights in Education bill into state law on Monday. Emma, huge story this in the United States, but not so much over here in Britain. So for those of us who missed it, what's been going on?
So on Monday of this week, Florida government, Ron DeSantis, signed this bill into law. It's been colloquially known in the US media and in US society as the Don't Say Gay bill, because it forbids instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in schools, in classes for children between kindergarten and third grade, which is year 4. So it's effectively 5 to 9 year olds.
And what's been the rationale behind this bill being in place?
So the rationale is, from DeSantis and Republicans, say that it's reasonable and that it's up to parents to decide if and when to teach children about LGBTQ inclusive topics. This has been widely criticised by advocates for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights and other liberal figures, including the President of the United States, Joe Biden, who released a statement: LGBTQI plus youth deserve to be affirmed and accepted as who they are.
Yes. That said, though, obviously there are some LGBTQ plus people in the Republican Party in Florida who would support this bill as well, Emma, who say that actually, you know, yes, I might be gay or I might be trans, but I think that that's a conversation at that kind of age that you should have with your children at home, not at school. I mean, you're, as a trans woman, how do you feel about that?
I feel as if, obviously, that idea that parents should speak to their children about this stuff and it should be their responsibility, that's obviously sort of, in theory, a good idea. But, you know, it relies on these children having a supportive, understanding home environment and they're not being taught about it in schools. Then it's kind of, there's no information about this and sort of no normalising of this anywhere. And it brings in echoes of Section 28, which was in the UK between 1988 and 2000 in Scotland, and then 2003 in England and Wales, which prohibited the promotion of homosexuality in quotes, by local authorities. So effectively banned LGBT plus topics from being discussed in schools. I mean, obviously I sort of have skin in the game, as it were, but I think that it's quite worrying that these topics are just being brushed off the table and there'll be no access to them in schools, because just by not teaching these things, you don't make these things go away, and you don't stop people being gay or lesbian or trans by not giving them information. You just make them unhappy and confused by removing that information from them at whatever age.
But, Abdul, compared to what we've just been discussing in Afghanistan, where, half of all children are not being allowed into school at all, this is actually quite a minor tweak, isn't it? In terms of everyone's allowed at school, everyone's allowed to be who they are. It's just saying, on this point, what Floridians clearly want, they've voted for it, is this bill that says we discuss sexuality at home until third grade. That is a democratic thing, isn't it?
Well, again, you get who you vote for. I mean, if the majority of the people voted for this person, and this person is acting because who he voted for in order to satisfy his constituents, right? So if they weren't very happy with him, they would have voted him out, and he would know that, supporting this bill would get him elected again, and he's one of the candidates for 2024.
Yeah, but he hasn't announced that yet, but it very much looks like that might be what he's warming up for, right?
Yeah, most likely, yeah. So he's doing what his constituents want. Now, one of the things that I would argue that maybe this is a good thing for teachers not to discuss this, for general teachers, because teachers are not good by virtue. Just being a teacher doesn't mean that you're good and experts in a lot of things. But maybe have counselors come to class and discuss these with the students. Have some teachers trained to discuss this with the students, because how do you know if this teacher is one of those people who voted for this mayor in order to support this bill, and you go and talk to him about it, and he goes and suppress your feelings and tells you, these your feelings you have because there's the wrong feelings or whatever. So maybe this is a good thing, but have someone who's an expert in this topic talk to students at a very early age to help them.
I suppose it's a misunderstanding, perhaps, Emma, of what a relatable, appropriate conversation for very young children might be. As you were saying, this could just be literally about having books in which a trans character or a gay character appears. It could just be a discussion about the existence of someone. It doesn't have to be an hour-long discussion, positing to boys and girls, are you the gender that you've been brought up as?
Exactly. And, I mean, the bill itself, this is the exact wording of the bill: classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. It's incredibly vague, and as you say, Ollie, it could be, applied to banning of books, banning of, discussions of children's parents. It's been sort of pushed through by this Republican governor in sort of a push back against the vague notion of wokeness, the vague notion that, children are being transed or children are being sort of like indoctrinated, and whereas in fact it seems just not to have a very specific goal in mind, except to push back against the notion of wokeness, as whatever that might be.
Well, if that is the goal, then haven't the woke lobby, from his point of view, fallen straight into his trap then? The New York Times and CNN, the hosts at the Oscars, Hollywood, all coming out and saying this is outrageous, is exactly the reaction that he wanted, because he says, aha, they want to indoctrinate your children. They think this perfectly reasonable. It doesn't say gay anywhere in the bill, and they're calling it the Don't Say Gay bill because they want to demonize me. It would be, in a way, better to have ignored it.
I don't know about ignoring it, but certainly you are right in that the outraged reaction from liberals in America is exactly, DeSantis has very much capitalised on it. You mentioned about him possibly running for president in 2024, and it's notable about the rhetoric he's been deploying around the signing of the bill, referring to transgender educational materials and saying of, Hollywood actors opposing this, the people who held Harvey Weinstein up opposed this, which I wear as a badge of honour. It's very much echoes of Trump rhetoric in this, and I think is very much appealing to that sort of audience, potentially ahead of a run in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, from that point of view, Theo, it's quite powerful, isn't it? If you're trying to appeal to the Trump lobby to say, look, I'm Trump, but I say less foolish things and I have legislative experience. Look, I can put Tea Party type policies into law. I've done it.
I think what the Republican Party wants is someone who will fight. They also, the sort of less Trumpy wing of it, also want someone who isn't Trump, who will definitely fight. And this is what he's done. Parental rights is a big Republican crusade at the moment. Glenn Youngkin won the swing state of Virginia as governor, fighting on this, particularly on... he didn't want critical race theory to be discussed in schools. The question of whether it actually was discussed in schools is another one, but that's very popular. You could just see this with American politics, that all of them love the fight. This is what they want to get into. They just, and it's so extreme. There are some arguments to be made in favour of this. I think that the one section of the bill says that schools may not discourage or prohibit parental notification and involvement in critical decisions affecting a student's mental, emotional and physical health or well-being, which seems like something that a lot of parents would agree with. But if you read the arguments that they have, DeSantis's spokesman said, if you're against the anti-grooming bill, which is what she's decided to call it, you're probably a groomer, or at least you don't denounce the grooming of 4 to 8-year-old children. Silence is complicity. So, you just, the temperature is so high with everything that you just sort of think, well, there's not going to be any reasonable debate there.
The other thing that strikes me, Theo, finally on this, is how much of the commentary from both sides clearly has underpinning it a real scepticism that state-provided education is there for the benefit of our children. Americans obviously feel very differently about this to Brits. I know that cuts through a lot of their politics in lots of different ways, but they just don't trust a state-appointed teacher to educate their children on things beyond sort of maths and science and reading and writing. Yeah,
I mean, I think maybe that aspect of it, I have slightly more sympathy with some of it because, it is obvious that educationists in general tilt to the left, and they in America do have a very fierce liberal conservative divide. And if you're thinking that the children are getting a very clear slant on things, then that's obviously going to be something that is going to interest you and concern you.
Okay, Theo, it's your turn to bring us a story after this. Okay, Theo, you're finishing the show. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
It was the week that the last Troubles trial began.
Aidan McAnesby was killed by a shot fired from this checkpoint. It ricocheted off the road and hit him in the back as he walked to a GAA match. His family arrived in court today, glad the trial was getting underway before the government could enact plans to end all prosecutions from the Troubles era.
Julian O'Neill reporting for BBC Newsline on Monday. So, Theo, what's the story?
This week in Belfast, David Holden, who's 52, went on trial accused of the manslaughter of Aidan McAnesby, who was killed shortly after crossing a border checkpoint in County Tyrone in February 1988. It's a very sad story. McAnesby was walking to a Gaelic football match when Holden fired 3 shots from his machine gun. Holden was a British soldier for the Grenadier Guards. He fired 3 shots from his machine gun, apparently by accident, one of which ricocheted off the road and struck the 23-year-old in the back. I should say that the whole question is to the extent to which it was accidental.
Yeah, Abdul, this is a live court case, so obviously we can't really comment on its merits, but what is the case for the defence?
The defense claims that this was accidental because the defendant had wet hands and he accidentally shot him. But this also amounts to gross negligence because if someone has wet hands, what is he doing with a lethal weapon in his hands, which requires around 9 tons of force in order to fire these shots? So that was the case against him.
And Emma, McAnesby's family have been waiting for this opportunity for decades, haven't they? And their pain is very evident from the clips that I've seen online.
Yes, so obviously this took place in February 1988, so they've been waiting, my maths, 34 years for this to come to trial. It's been a long and horrendous. Sean McAnesby, in that clip that we heard before, he later went on to say every grieving family deserves a chance for justice.
And obviously there's been an impact on Holden's family too, whilst they've been waiting for this to come to court for so many years. But Theo, that's not why you've chosen this as your story of the week, has it? You hinted this is the last of the Troubles cases. How can you say that with such confidence?
I can't actually be certain about that, but it looks likely that it is the last case because last year ministers announced plans to introduce a statute of limitation on all killings that took place before 1988. So there is in place an effective amnesty on paramilitaries who committed crimes, who have, for a variety of reasons, proved impossible to prosecute, not least because the Blair government and the coalition government issued comfort letters to all the on-the-run suspects saying that they would not, or nearly all of them, saying that they wouldn't prosecute them. So this would then extend this also to the veterans of the cases, such as David Holden.
I mean, Abdul, on your podcast, you talk about refugees who have been displaced by war and the consequences of that, sometimes years after, whatever affected them, whatever caused them to move has done that. I mean, as I said earlier, it's not like the pain disappears, is it? Why should there be an amnesty? Either it happened or it didn't.
No, it shouldn't be any amnesty because as a family of a victim, or any refugee or any people who have gone through the troubles and people who lost loved ones, they need closure. And the family trying to get closure here after 30-40 years because they wanted some closure. The pain doesn't go away because it's been a couple of years. So for me, I know that I have lost a lot of people. Every Syrian person has lost a lot of people in Syria, same in Ukraine. So to suddenly say, okay, we need to issue an amnesty for all those people who killed civilians. This is like giving a license to kill to all those who committed crimes, whether they're terrorists or they're an army by the state. So it's really troublesome to hear. It's not something that families of people who lost loved ones would like to hear. And this is not I'm not sure it helps anything. If anything, we still, the courts in Germany still try to prosecute Nazis from the 40s. So why should not be doing the same? No accountability, no justice.
I suppose the answer to that might be, Emma, that the British government are not prepared to think of the British Army in the same breath as Nazis. Their view is, well, if things happened in a war scenario that still haven't been prosecuted yet, they're probably things where there's two sides to the story and the public will support the idea that we shouldn't be coming after people in their 50s for things they did in their teens or 20s. But that doesn't account for the fact that in this sort of scenario, you're talking about a person who died who was completely a civilian, was not involved at all in the conflict. Absolutely.
I mean, the argument for this amnesty on prosecutions, it comes from the idea that what is the good of prosecuting 30-plus-year-old crimes? There have been several other Troubles trials which have collapsed due to inadmissible evidence. There was another case of 80-year-old former soldier Dennis Hutchins, accused of attempted murder in 1974, which ended when Hutchins died of COVID mid-trial. But on the other hand, as you say, these are crimes and it doesn't matter if they happen in a war scenario or not. And if there is a way of finding justice and determining what happened, then it should absolutely be pursued. Prosecutors are reviewing cases relevant to reliant on evidence from statements made 30-odd years ago. But the fact is, if there is a way of finding justice for these families after so many years, then surely they should be pursued until there is absolutely no further way of doing so. And I mean, Amnesty International have described the UK government's bill as a de facto amnesty for human rights violations during the Northern Ireland conflict. And certainly there is a perspective which would say that that is accurate.
All of the main Irish parties are against this amnesty, Theo, but what's the position of the Labour Party in the UK? Because obviously a lot of British people and a lot of British veterans in particular would support it.
The Labour Party also opposes it, and it may, obviously it's been the legislation has got bogged down at the moment, but getting it through Parliament will be a bit of a job.
Abdul, I'm curious what your view was as someone who came to Britain fairly recently, not having lived here before, about how the Troubles is discussed here, or I suppose more to the point, not really discussed in England at least. Like obviously in Ireland, it's still very much a live issue, but I'm going to speculate that you never encountered anyone talking about it, which is quite interesting because it's such recent history.
I think the first time I heard about it from a video clip, I saw it when I arrived in England by the Cranberries. I think it's called Zombie or something like this.
Right, yeah, and an Irish band, of course, yeah.
An Irish band, yeah, and I started reading about it, and as you said, pretty much nobody talks about it, but pretty much nobody talks about anything that the British Army has done through the years. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that Syria was a French colony and it was, divided by Britain and France when Britain took Jordan. and France decided to take Syria and Lebanon. A lot of people didn't know that. A lot of people didn't know anything about what the British military did. So me, myself, I don't know a lot about the troubles other than reading some news about it, actually, and hearing that for some people I lived with in London, they told me that, they used to go to the pub and then the phone would ring and they would tell them, you have to leave. There's a bomb in this bar or something like this. It was awful for me to hear that people in the West lived through this, because we didn't live through this until after 2011 when they started the uprising against Assad. But it was, as I said, these are not discussed. But again, equally, what the British Army has done in a lot of countries has not been discussed.
Well, I suppose that point about what Londoners in particular put up with, Emma, is possibly relevant to how Conservative Party supporters and veterans feel about this, which is that even in the case of civilians being injured, well, that's what happened in London at the hands of the IRA. That was the kind of conflict we were dealing with then. It was a very heightened atmosphere. So, of course, that may have happened at the hands of the British military as well.
Yeah, I don't think that that's an argument that stands up particularly well. I don't think you can say, some of our civilians died, we shouldn't prosecute some of our soldiers because they may have killed civilians on your side. That doesn't seem like a particularly healthy argument to have. Can I make a point which is slightly related to what Abdul was saying, which is that obviously I did grew up here in the UK. I was 6 years old when the Troubles ended, when the Good Friday. I was 6 years old in 1998 when the Good Friday Agreement was signed. So obviously this is all sort of older history. It was slightly before my time, but still fairly recent history and very relevant. It was happening in the country that I grew up in, and I barely knew anything about this. I didn't know anything about Aidan McAnespie until Theo raised it as a story to discussion on This Week. I didn't, and while researching, I didn't know much about Soldier F being prosecuted or his case collapsed over killings on Bloody Sunday. So I certainly agree with Abdul that the way that the UK talks about what happens in the Troubles which is to basically not talk about it, is pretty extraordinary. And that's someone like me who's, from this country, and who, for people my age, we don't really know the details at all because it's just not talked about anymore.
Just to come back on the point you're making before, obviously there is a really good case to say that the British Army ought to be held to a different standard to the IRA and the lawyers paramilitaries, of course. And we do know that there are cases, Bloody Sunday, Ballymurphy, where their behaviour was horrendous and homicidal, and there's obviously a very good argument for seeing those people in court as well. There are also, as we have discussed, massive practical problems with that in this case, the McAnespie case, I think it's been investigated something like 4 times. I mean, the RUC did an initial investigation and found, perhaps to no one's great surprise, that it was an accident and they should forget about it. It then was looked at by the Historical Crimes Tribunal. It was then looked at, it's been 4 or 5 times, and we'll see how this case goes. But it obviously is very difficult to after poor investigations have been done first time round, it is very hard to then dredge up the truth.
Okay, thanks for that, Theo, and thank you to Emma and Abdul for dredging up your truths. We will be back next week, and remember, you can follow this show for free and get every episode as soon as it's released. Just search for The Week Unwrapped wherever you get your podcast. But that's it for this episode. I'm taking some time off now for the Easter holidays, so you'll be in the safe hands of Aaron McNichol for the next couple of weeks. The safe hairy hands. He has very hairy arms. Until then, I've been Olly Mann. Our music is by Tom Morby, the producer, Sophie King, and Rethink Audio. Bye-bye.